que vous avez demandé n'est plus en service actuellement. Le numéro que vous avez demandé n'est plus en service actuellement.
Good afternoon. My name is Betsy Anderson, and I'm the Executive Director of the World Justice Project. And I'm very pleased to welcome you to this afternoon's closing session of the World Justice Forum 2022. What an incredible Justice Week we have had together. We have enjoyed stimulating exchanges in plenaries and working sessions that have spilled out into the expo hall. We've had wonderful hospitality from the City of Peace and Justice and Love. We've been welcomed into the homes of our Hague-based friends, and we've enjoyed art, film, cartoons, music, and dance, giving voice to our hopes for justice. We have dug deep into the data and what it tells us about the rule of law and the justice challenges before us. We have heard from colleagues throughout the world about the change-making approaches that they are using to buck the negative rule of law tide. We leave with a heightened sense of urgency and also with renewed hope that there are solutions to the challenges we face and that working in concert with a global movement of colleagues, such as that assembled here, we will build more just communities. A critically important feature of this movement that has been highlighted throughout the week and in today's discussions is that it draws on the contributions of diverse actors from government and civil society, intergovernmental organizations, and the private sector. So I know we're all excited to hear about the Challenge Award winners, but we're going to begin today's session with a series of reflections from leading figures across these sectors, challenging us, sharing their perspectives on the importance of the rule of law cause and their own commitments to advancing it. To begin, I'm pleased to share a brief recorded message from Brad Smith, the President and Vice Chairman of Microsoft.
Hello, I'm Brad Smith, the President and Vice Chair of Microsoft. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to spend at least a few minutes with you in what I know has been an important and eventful week. It probably won't surprise you to know that we at Microsoft have always been big supporters of the World Justice Project. I think we knew about it when it was only a twinkle in Bill Neukom's eye, because Bill, of course, was not only the founder of this project, but the founder of our department at Microsoft as well. We all grew up professionally, if you will, listening and learning from Bill as he talked about the rule of law. Well, as I look today at where things stand, and as I look back at what the World Justice Project has accomplished, the first thing I would say is, I think we live in a world in 2022 that needs this work more than ever. I think one of the great things about the World Justice Project is it has brought definition to the rule of law. It says that law really works properly only when it's accountable, only when it is just, only when it is open, only when it is accessible and impartial. And it's given meaning to each of these terms, meaning that can be measured. And I think that's what the world needs, a grounding in what it means to have rule of law, and even more in understanding of whether it's moving forward or backwards. The Rule of Law Index, I think, has made a major contribution to the world, and unfortunately this year, it's helping us understand that things are not moving in a positive direction. In fact, when you read the 2021 index, as I'm sure many of you have discussed this week, it shows that roughly 75% of the world's nations that have roughly 85% of the world's people have seen a decline in the rule of law. And I'd like to talk for a couple of moments about what we're seeing and why it matters. Of course, for businesses, people often ask, do we care? And the answer is yes, we do. I think we care for two reasons. We can't invest, we can't grow, we can't meet our customers' needs without legal systems that are accountable, just, open, and accessible and impartial. But I think we also care for a second reason. While big corporations may look mysterious or even monolithic from the outside, in fact, they are like every other organization on the planet, large or small. They're led, they're staffed by people. And certainly at Microsoft, we care about the issues that matter to people everywhere. And when we look at what's happened to the rule of law, I'd say a couple of things. First, COVID has not been kind to the rule of law, as I'm sure you've discussed this week. Too many governments in too many countries use the pandemic as an excuse to dial back on freedom and the rule of law. And we need to take this coming out of the pandemic, whether it happens in a month or a year or a decade, to restore the rule of law we had before and then to work even harder to make things better. But there's a second dimension that I'd like to talk about today as well, a dimension that I think is part of what we're seeing in 2022. We're seeing the decline in the rule of law not only for specific communities, as you're discussing, not only for so many countries, but for the world as a whole. And by that I mean we're seeing an assault on the international rule of law as part of the war in Ukraine. I think one of the great contributions to the rule of law came in the 20th century by what was frankly the most embattled generation in the history of humanity, the people who had made it through World War II. A generation that saw 50 million innocent civilians killed as part of a global war, and a generation that came together 4 years after the war ended to create new law, new rules at the international level to ensure that what happened in World War II would not be repeated, to ensure that there would be accountability for people who engaged in war crimes, who killed innocent civilians. Part of what our generation is being tested on today, I believe, this year and this decade, is whether we'll have the fortitude, the ability, the sheer perseverance to address the rule of law in ways that matter, from the smallest community to the planet as a whole. And I hope that all of you have had the opportunity not just to learn from each other at The Hague, but to take inspiration from each other. Because we live in a world and during a time when we need that inspiration. Even in dark days, as there are in some cities in Ukraine today, I believe we need to hold fast, stand up for the rule of law, and ultimately build a new foundation that builds on top of what people built on before us. And if we can come out of this conference and this week and this year and hold on to these ideals and nurture them further, I think we'll hold true to the vision that created this project, and even more, the vision that created the rule of law in the first place. Certainly, on behalf of all of us at Microsoft, we're proud and excited to be part of this. Thank you.
We sincerely thank Brad and Microsoft for their support of this forum, and even more for that commitment that you heard just now, and to their being a part of our movement for the rule of law. Governments are another set of critical actors in this movement. We were delighted to have a group of governments come together on the sidelines of this year's forum in the form of the Justice Action Coalition to announce concrete plans to advance people-centered justice. Representing this group and to share plans of his government, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome to the podium His Excellency Mohamed Ikta Abdoulaye, Minister of Justice of Niger. Minister Abdoulaye will be speaking in French, so if you need the assistance of a headset, now would be the time to put it on. Minister.
Mesdames, Messieurs, chers participantes, chers participants, du haut de cette tribune, j'exprime ma profonde gratitude aux organisateurs qui ont bien voulu m'inviter à participer à ce forum mondial et de m'avoir proposé de m'adresser à la plénière de sa clôture. Je remercie particulièrement Madame la ministre du Commerce extérieur et de la coopération au développement, Madame Liché Schnamaher, pour toutes les dispositions prises pour faciliter notre participation à ce forum qui représente aujourd'hui le premier événement international pour l'État de droit. Je me réjouis profondément de m'adresser à cette auguste assemblée pour porter si haut et si loin la voix du Niger au-delà, celle plurielle de l'Afrique, dont l'une des aspirations est une Afrique de bonne gouvernance, de démocratie, de respect des droits de l'homme, de justice et de l'état de droit à l'horizon 2063 de son agenda. Je vous remercie donc pour cet honneur dont mon pays peut particulièrement tirer une légitime fierté. Mesdames, Messieurs, par devoir moral et par solidarité, je ne peux entamer mes propos sans avoir une pensée pieuse pour toutes les victimes de la pandémie du Covid-19, ainsi que les victimes innocentes du terrorisme à travers le monde et actualité oblige, de toutes les personnes injustement tuées et mises sur les chemins de l'exil du fait de cette guerre imposée au peuple ukrainien au plein cœur de l'Europe. Avec plusieurs milliers de morts civiles et militaires et plusieurs millions de personnes réfugiées, l'agression russe de l'Ukraine vient allonger davantage la liste des drames humains qui sévissent aujourd'hui sur l'ensemble des 5 continents. Les conséquences tant humaines, matérielles, financières et économiques de ce conflit ne font qu'accentuer la précarité de la condition humaine en plongeant l'ensemble de la planète dans l'incertitude et le désarroi. Il est plus que jamais nécessaire de repenser la gouvernance mondiale et le multilatéralisme en vue de pacifier davantage les relations internationales, de créer un nouvel ordre mondial basé sur le respect des engagements souverainement souscrits, de la souveraineté des États, du respect de la dignité humaine et des droits de l'homme, de la justice, de la solidarité, du partage et du droit de chaque peuple à disposer de lui-même. C'est fort de cette conviction que mon pays, par la voix de son représentant permanent aux Nations Unies, a voté avec faveur la résolution condamnant la Russie en soutenant que l'opération militaire russe en Ukraine constitue, ni plus ni moins, une violation flagrante de la souveraineté et de l'intégrité territoriale d'un État membre des Nations Unies qui est l'Ukraine. Mesdames, Messieurs, le Forum mondial de la justice 2022 qui s'achève nous a donné une fois de plus l'opportunité d'engager une réflexion collective croisée et un dialogue mondial sur les causes profondes de la crise mondiale de l'état de droit. De notre point de vue, ces thématiques sont liées et si interdépendantes qu'elles ne sauraient effectivement se concevoir ni être traitées distinctement. C'est dire que le thème de ce forum, celui de bâtir des communautés plus justes, n'est certainement pas un choix du hasard. Il est pertinent à plus d'un titre parce qu'il offre aux décideurs politiques, aux experts, aux acteurs de la société civile et autres sensibilités, ici réunis, en présentiel ou en distanciel, de réfléchir et d'aborder ces thèmes sans tabou et pour le bien de l'humanité. L'édification d'un État de droit est une œuvre de longue haleine, un chemin sinueux qui exige de tous une conviction de la primauté du droit sur toute chose et un engagement permanent et constant à promouvoir en tout lieu et en toutes circonstances l'égalité de tous devant les normes juridiques et l'existence des juridictions indépendantes. On ne peut bâtir des communautés justes sans état de droit. Or, comme nous le savons, L'état de droit repose sur la permanence et la reconnaissance d'un certain nombre de principes dont, entre autres, l'existence d'une hiérarchie de normes, l'égalité de tous en droit et l'indépendance de la justice. Mesdames, Messieurs, la justice est un des piliers essentiels de l'état de droit. Depuis la fin de la Seconde Guerre mondiale, on peut affirmer sans risque de se tromper que la justice est un bien commun universel. C'est à ce titre que nous avons des tribunaux internationaux comme la Cour pénale internationale qu'abrite notre pays hôte sur ces terres. C'est pour cela que nous avons des tribunaux supranationaux comme la Cour européenne de justice ou la Cour de justice de la Communauté économique des États de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, CEDEAO, ou encore les chambres africaines extraordinaires ayant jugé à Dakar l'ex et défunt président tchadien Houssen Habré, pour ne citer que ce cas. C'est toujours au nom de ces biens communs que représente la justice que des États s'adjugent la compétence universelle pour des infractions commises hors de leur territoire et par des personnes étrangères sans que ces États en soient les victimes de ces infractions. Certes, la justice est rendue différemment en fonction des États, des systèmes politiques, des réalités socio-culturelles, religieuses, etc. Cependant, le sentiment d'injustice, lui, n'a pas de race, n'a pas de pays, des systèmes politiques, parce que c'est un sentiment purement humain que chacun d'entre nous peut ressentir en cas d'abus de toute autre nature. D'où la nécessité pour nous, États, par leurs responsabilités régaliennes, devraient faire de la justice les piliers essentiels de l'État de droit. En cela, il me plaît de partager avec vous cette citation attribuée à Nelson Mandela, qui soutenait que priver les gens de leurs droits fondamentaux revient à contester leur humanité même. La justice étant un de ces droits inaliénables, nous ne devons de la rendre accessible à tous. Je salue les organisateurs de ce forum pour cette initiative qui nous a permis de consacrer à cette question essentielle ces quelques jours de réflexion dans un esprit de donner et de recevoir afin de nous enrichir mutuellement des expériences reçues des uns et des autres pour améliorer notre offre de justice. Assurément, les défis majeurs auxquels nos États sont confrontés en matière d'accès à la justice, de lutte contre la corruption, de promotion de la bonne gouvernance, chacun en fonction de la spécificité de son contexte, nous obligent à des actions concertées pour mieux répondre aux attentes de nos concitoyens. Mesdames, Messieurs, en ce qui concerne le Niger, pour trouver des solutions aux multiples dysfonctionnements de son système judiciaire, nous avons organisé en novembre 2012 les États généraux de la justice, ces assises nationales, qui ont réuni environ 500 personnes issues de toutes les couches socio-professionnelles du pays, ont abouti à des conclusions et recommandations sur la base desquelles notre politique nationale, justice et droits humains, est bâtie. Elle est assortie d'un plan décennal de mise en œuvre pour la période 2016-2025. Par cet acte, le Niger démocratise les questions de justice en donnant la parole aux couches représentatives de notre société pour faire écho du cri de cœur de nos concitoyens sur leur idée de justice aussi. Cela rend le ministère de la Justice et l'ensemble du secteur de la justice redevables devant la société en général. Un comité multi-acteurs a été mis en place pour suivre les niveaux de mise en œuvre de ces recommandations ici des États généraux de la justice. Je voudrais appeler d'autres pays, qu'ils soient africains ou non, à suivre cet exemple et à ouvrir le monde de conception et d'évaluation des secteurs de la justice à toutes les parties de la société. Nous, au Niger, comme nous sommes prêts à partager les leçons apprises sur la façon dont nous nous sommes engagés dans un tel effort. Depuis lors, nous nous attelons dans le respect de la Constitution et des engagements internationaux, notamment en ce qui concerne l'ODD 16, de créer les conditions d'un facile accès de nos populations à la justice sans discrimination. Mesdames, Messieurs, la justice nigériane, comme celle des autres pays en voie de développement, est confrontée à une insuffisance cruciale en ressources tant humaines, matérielles que financières pour faire face aux défis qui sont les siens. À cet égard, c'est le lieu de remercier nos partenaires bilatéraux et multilatéraux tels que la France, l'Italie, les États-Unis d'Amérique, les Pays-Bas, l'Union européenne, les organismes des Nations unies, qui nous soutiennent dans nos efforts d'asseoir un système judiciaire répondant aux aspirations légitimes de nos concitoyens. Pour ne laisser personne en marge, la solidarité internationale est plus que jamais nécessaire pour améliorer la performance de nos systèmes judiciaires éprouvés ces dernières années par des crises multiformes. Je vais principalement parler du terrorisme, de la criminalité transnationale organisée et la crise sanitaire liée à la pandémie de Covid-19. Cependant, malgré ces défis, la justice nigériane s'efforce de répondre aux aspirations de nos 24 millions d'habitants répartis sur 1 267 000 km² de superficie que compte ce beau pays de l'espace sahélo-saharien. La justice formelle avec une quarantaine de juridictions, un magistrat pour 50 000 habitants, a des limites objectives pour prendre en charge toutes les affaires dont 35% relèvent du pénal, 27% des problèmes fonciers et les autres affaires portent sur des problèmes de voisinage et des problèmes familiaux. Comme beaucoup d'États africains, les difficultés d'accès à la justice formelle pour diverses raisons liées à la distance, au coût, à l'analphabétisme de la majorité des citoyens et à la méconnaissance du fonctionnement de la justice moderne font que l'essentiel des litiges sont traités en dehors de la justice formelle. Ainsi, au Niger, les dernières statistiques de l'enquête nationale sur les besoins et la satisfaction en matière de justice réalisée par Hill montrent seulement 10% des litiges sont portés devant la justice formelle. Ainsi, respectivement 34, 30 et 29% de ces litiges sont gérés au niveau des membres de la famille, des autorités coutumières ou traditionnelles ou directement négociés entre parties. Ces statistiques, mises en lumière par l'enquête nationale réalisée par Hill avec le soutien des Pays-Bas, constituent une boussole pour apporter des réponses innovantes aux problèmes de justice auxquels sont confrontés nos concitoyens. C'est dans ce sens que nous venons de lancer les activités du programme Innovation de la justice au Niger ce 25 mai 2022 à Niamey. Doté d'une enveloppe d'environ 7 millions d'euros, cela nous permettra de renforcer notre système judiciaire en plaçant au centre des préoccupations non pas les institutions et les procédures existantes, mais les personnes et le résultat dont elles ont besoin. L'accès à la justice est une exigence fondamentale de l'état de droit dans lequel toute personne a droit à ce que sa cause soit entendue équitablement et publiquement par un tribunal compétent, impartial, établi par la loi comme stipulé par l'article 14.1 du Pacte international relatif aux droits civils et politiques du 16 décembre 1966. C'est en cela que nous nous efforçons, chaque jour un peu plus, à travers des réformes visant à élargir la carte judiciaire pour un meilleur rapprochement de la justice, des justiciables et la fourniture de l'aide juridictionnelle aux couches les plus vulnérables, les femmes, les enfants et les personnes indigènes. À cet effet, nous avons repensé notre organisation judiciaire pour assurer, dans une perspective de court et moyen terme, la couverture de notre territoire en juridiction d'une part et d'autre part, renforcer les ressources de la structure chargée de rendre disponible l'assistance juridique et judiciaire au profit des groupes les plus vulnérables. C'est dire que l'accès à la justice est un atout. Le plus important pour le parti, c'est un règlement rapide et juste de leurs différends par une personne ou une institution à laquelle elles placent leur confiance. Mesdames, Messieurs, ce forum est donc pour toutes les parties prenantes, États et partenaires, acteurs de la société civile, de la plus haute importance à ce qu'il nous a permis, à travers les divers panels qui ont été animés, d'apprécier l'état de mise en œuvre de nos différents engagements en faveur d'une justice plus accessible, plus équitable dans le contexte de nouvelles menaces à la paix et à la sécurité. Il nous a donné une nouvelle opportunité de mener une réflexion analytique sur les défis afin de mieux préserver la démocratie, la paix et la stabilité dans nos pays, d'explorer des pistes et actions innovantes à même de contribuer à améliorer la gouvernance du secteur de la justice. L'enjeu étant d'en garantir son indépendance et son impartialité, en identifiant les mesures d'adaptation des systèmes judiciaires nationaux aux nouvelles exigences de prévention et de lutte contre les menaces à la paix et à la sécurité. Mesdames, Messieurs, l'autre dimension de ce forum a porté sur le gouvernement ouvert à la lutte contre la corruption. Nul besoin ici de disserter très longuement sur le fait qu'un gouvernement ouvert reposant sur les principes de transparence, de responsabilité et de participation est plus à même de prévenir et de lutter efficacement contre la corruption. À ce sujet, le travail de l'OCDE sur les gouvernements ouverts rendus publics en 2016 nous édifie davantage. En effet, près de 60% des 53 pays enquêtés reconnaissent que les principes du gouvernement ouvert contribuent fortement à prévenir et à lutter contre la corruption, dont les conséquences pour la démocratie et l'état de droit se traduisent entre autres selon la Banque mondiale par la dévalorisation de la confiance et la légitimité, par la démotivation et le bouleversement de la participation politique, la déformation des résultats des élections et la complication de la mise en œuvre des politiques. À ce sujet, mon pays, le Niger, s'est fortement engagé sous la haute direction de son Excellence, M. Mohamed, président de la République, chef de l'État, à consolider les acquis de la lutte contre la corruption en responsabilisant davantage les institutions administratives et judiciaires en charge de cette question, en leur donnant carte blanche à agir contre toute forme de corruption, quels que soient les mis en cause. À cet égard, dans son discours d'investiture le 2 avril 2021, il a soutenu, je le cite, « La meilleure façon de lutter contre la corruption est de sévir contre ceux qui s'en rendent coupables. Mon credo sera de miser principalement sur la pédagogie de l'exemple en tolérant d'aucune façon les principes de l'impunité. » Fin de citation. Il s'agit donc, sur cette question comme bien d'autres, d'agir contre les délinquants de manière égale et non discriminatoire. Cette dernière dimension de notre forum consacrée par les instruments internationaux nous interpelle tous, car elle traite des principes fondamentaux des droits de l'homme. À ce niveau, des efforts importants doivent encore être faits pour que chacun puisse faire prévaloir ses droits devant la loi et ses droits à la protection contre toute forme de discrimination. Cependant, force est de constater qu'il ne suffit pas toujours et dans tous les contextes d'adopter des lois pour que les droits soient garantis et protégés. Les contextes socio-culturels et religieux diffèrent d'un pays à un autre. Il est important à ce niveau de veiller à ce que nous adoptions des textes qui ne soient pas plutôt contre-productifs et qui constituerait plus une menace à l'intégrité physique et à la vie des personnes que de leur assurer une jouissance effective de leurs droits. Il faut se rappeler que rien n'est immuable et qu'avec le temps, tout ce qui paraît loin finit par se rapprocher et tout ce qui paraît impossible finit par être possible sous les effets transformateurs du temps et de la dynamique des mœurs. Mesdames, Messieurs, c'est pourquoi je vous engage à poursuivre la réflexion à même d'aboutir à des réformes pertinentes, en phase avec les préoccupations du moment et sur lesquelles mon pays pourrait utilement s'appuyer en vue de repenser leur stratégie et leur action, notamment en matière de lutte contre la corruption, la protection des droits humains et l'accès de nos concitoyens à une justice juste et diligente. À cet égard, il me plaît de rappeler certains engagements pris ici à La Haye en février 2019, soutenus dans la déclaration dite de La Haye, lorsque des ministres et des représentants de haut niveau de divers pays et organisations internationales ont convenu d'un accord sur les opportunités de renforcer le soutien et l'engagement en faveur de l'accès à la justice. En conséquence, je vous invite tous, chacun en ce qui le concerne, d'adopter des mesures dont, entre autres, celle de mettre les individus et leurs besoins juridiques au cœur des systèmes judiciaires. Pour comprendre les besoins et les souhaits des usagers, les obstacles qu'ils rencontrent et connaître la nature exacte des services auxquels ils ont accès. Le Niger est donc fier d'être membre de cette coalition d'action pour la justice. Depuis sa création, nous avons travaillé à des actions concrètes, à partager dans le cadre de ce résultat. Plus particulièrement, nous avons mené ces dernières années une enquête sur les besoins et de la satisfaction en matière de justice, dont les résultats serviront à définir les priorités futures dans le secteur judiciaire de notre pays. Un exercice similaire sera mené dans 4 ans pour en mesurer le résultat. J'espère que d'autres pays africains rejoindront ces groupes de pionniers et étudieront comment des programmes de justice orientés vers l'action peuvent prendre forme. Notre ministère et d'autres institutions de justice se réjouissent de partager nos initiatives et nos résultats l'année prochaine lors du sommet sur les ODD. Nous espérons que d'autres pays feront de même. Sur ce, je vous remercie pour votre aimable attention.
Merci beaucoup, Minister. We're very grateful to you and your government and to the other members of the Justice Action Coalition for the commitment to the agenda that brings us all here together this week. We're conscious that this forum falls at roughly the halfway mark for the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And we have seen this forum as an important springboard for getting us back on track, particularly to achieve SDG 16 as foundational to all of the 2030 goals. To put our work in the context of that broader SDG agenda, I'm delighted to welcome via video link UN Undersecretary General Usha Rao Manori, Associate Administrator of the UN Development Program. Usha.
Thank you very much. I hope you can see and hear me. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, and World Justice Forum attendees. I would like to start by congratulating the World Justice Project and all the organizations who work together to co-create this event. In these times of conflict, heightened tensions, and polarization, solidarity, partnership, and trust are more important than ever. Weak rule of law, inequality, injustice, and violations of human rights directly impede human well-being, human security, and a rights-based and inclusive and sustainable development. I would like to commend all the finalists of the World Justice Challenge and all of you for your tireless efforts to uphold the rule of law, expand access to justice, and fight for equal protection, human rights, and dignity for all. These themes are vital to UNDP and are an integral part of our new strategic vision and plan. Along with our sister agencies at the UN, we recognize the importance of rule of law and justice in preventing and addressing conflict, including as part of the peace agenda and as the backbone of the 2030 agenda. We work tirelessly with national counterparts to strengthen the rule of law institutions, including justice, security, and national human rights systems. UNDP's global program for rule of law and human rights, for example, delivered targeted assistance to over 50 crisis and fragile contexts in 2021 in collaboration with our sister UN entities. And in 2020, our interventions facilitated access to justice for 31 million people. Through our gender justice platform with UN Women, we delivered access to justice for women and girls in 14 conflict-affected countries. Our work on access to justice is done in the broader context of strengthening the rule of law, SDG integration, and upholding human rights. We're developing our strategy for environmental justice, expanding our business and human rights work to hold corporations more accountable, and working towards small arms reduction with the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs. Finally, I'm very pleased to announce that at tomorrow's UNDP side event, the launch of UNDP's Justice Futures Collab, we will discuss how e-justice and digitalization can transform access to justice. For example, artificial intelligence was used in Brazil to identify justice trends and the impacts on vulnerable communities. The state of Palestine has improved justice delivery with an enhanced data management system. And in Pakistan, a human rights data collection system helps to monitor and report on human rights commitments and align them with the Sustainable Development Goals. To make justice a reality, we need to listen more to the people, learn from our mistakes, and share best practices. Governments, in turn, need to better understand the needs of their people and proactively uphold their human rights. Human rights and justice, indeed, are the bedrock of development. As the Secretary General has stated in his common agenda, justice is a critical dimension of a renewed social contract anchored in human rights. Justice systems can resolve disputes, address grievances, support inclusion, and prevent discrimination, and ultimately rebuild trust. Adopting systems-based solutions can help address people's justice needs while at the same time preserving our planet. UNDP and our Justice Futures Collab stand ready to help our partners and work with our partners to deliver these solutions, and we look forward to working with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Undersecretary General. We've been so gratified by the partnership with UNDP this week and convening this forum and throughout the year in bringing these kinds of initiatives to bear on the very significant challenges we all face. Thank you very much. Throughout this week, we have been reminded of how high the stakes are for our efforts to advance the rule of law. And our next speaker drives this home. It is my privilege to share with you a recorded message from David Beasley, Executive Director of the World Food Program, who offers his perspective on the importance of the rule of law for his organization's efforts to combat hunger around the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be with you at the World Justice Forum, and thank you for this time because we are facing unparalleled crisis around the world, unlike anything we have seen since World War II. When I took over the world's largest humanitarian operation, the United Nations World Food Program, an organization that is in over 80 countries around the world, at the time was only assisting about 80 million people. My goal then was to put the World Food Program out of business because we were going to engage the private sector and do all the things necessary to create sustainability and resilience around the world. And we know you cannot end hunger, you cannot end poverty without the private sector, without rule of law, and without just communities. Unfortunately, in the last 5 years, we've gone completely backwards. In fact, when I arrived at the World Food Program, there were 80 million people marching towards starvation. Now, that's not chronic hunger. Chronic hunger was 650 million back then. Today, it's over 810 million. But the striking number that should disturb us all are the numbers with regards to people that are marching towards starvation. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. So that number went from 80 to 135 right before COVID. Well, why? Well, war, man-made conflict, compounded with climate shocks, climate change. Then comes COVID, the rippling effect around the world that drove the numbers from 135 to 276 million people around the world not knowing where their next meal is coming from. So you had conflict, climate, and then COVID. What's really troubling is that within that 276 were 49 million people knocking at famine's door. And that's in 43 countries. So if you want to know which countries very well will have famine and destabilization and mass migration by necessity, well, begin to look at those 43 countries. And just when you think it can't get any worse, Ukraine. What's troubling about Ukraine, unlike all other places of conflict, is this is the breadbasket of the world. Now, the longest bread lines of the world. This is a nation that produces enough food to feed 400 million people. When you take that out of the marketplace, you begin to see why there's volatility. Compounded that with all the fuel pricing increases as well as the shipping costs increasing, you can see the dynamics of devastation countries around the world. Over 36 countries around the world depend 50% or more of their grain coming from the Russia-Ukraine area. Fertilizers, 40% base product from Belarus, Russia. We've got compounding upon compounding, catastrophe upon catastrophe, a perfect storm within a perfect storm. If you go back and look at the numbers, for example, in 2007, 8, 9, during the Arab Spring, this is much worse. And in fact, then there were 48 nations or more that had political unrest, destabilization, riots, you name it. And today, it is worse. Already, you're seeing Pakistan, Peru, Indonesia, Sri Lanka. You saw what happened in Mali, Burkina Faso, Chad. This or these are only signs of things to come. And the ripple effect is going to be devastating. We are already looking at 50 million additional people moving into this, what we call IPC level 3, 4, 5, marching toward starvation. That's why we've got to get the port open. This is what happens when we have destabilization and market volatility and lack of just communities. You will never end hunger. You will never end poverty without just communities. When I arrived, as I had said earlier, my goal was to put the World Food Program out of business because I truly believe and have seen firsthand as a former United States governor, when you build just communities with rule of law and systems in place, safety net programs, empowering the private sector, you build jobs, economic opportunity. That is all I was hoping to focus on, but it seems like I've been focused on nothing but fire and war, a ring of fire around the world, creating chaos, destabilization. In fact, planet Earth is very, very fragile right now if we don't contain the situation and begin to mitigate and resolve many of the issues that we are talking about. But when we come together with rule of law and systems, development, private sector, simple to you and me. We know that corporations small, middle, large, don't invest unless they know that their assets and their systems and their programs are protected so they can achieve and do that which they wish to do within a community. And when citizens are protected, they can go to work, their civil rights are protected, the system of law is just, well, success takes place. I've seen it firsthand all over the world. Probably nobody on earth sees more devastation and destruction than I do in the World Food Program. So we know from experience, anecdotally, what happens when you don't have just systems. So, to the World Justice Forum, thank you. Thank you for your commitment to building the fundamental foundation that's critical to the success of any continent, any culture, any nation, and any community. Together, we can end poverty, we can end hunger by putting just systems in place. Thank you.
A compelling cause for sure. Achieving our ambitious rule of law and justice goals will require leadership at all levels and across all sectors, government, private sector, and civil society, as we've heard from so many representatives today. It is a pleasure to welcome, as our final speaker this afternoon, to the stage someone who has been just such a leader across many sectors and institutions. As former President of Ireland, former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and current Chair of the Elders. I'm also very proud to say an honorary chair of the World Justice Project. Please welcome President Mary Robinson.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because we're being live streamed as well. It has been an honor to attend this year's World Justice Forum, and I'm truly grateful to everyone that I have learned from here, and I mean in particular the young people. The insightful and reflective conversations and the productive working sessions have shown us how much more there is to do until this world is fair and just, but have also highlighted the innovative solutions that can make a better future possible. The combined challenges and impacts of the war in Ukraine, the continuing COVID-19 pandemic, and the ever-present climate crisis can appear daunting. But we should never lose sight of the fact that there is an internationally agreed roadmap that, if followed with political vision and courage, can deliver a fairer, more just, and peaceful world. In 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals were agreed upon by a record-breaking number of governments around the world. I had my mandate as the Special Envoy on Climate at the time, so I was watching closely those discussions. Goal 16 for peace, justice, and strong institutions commits to the provision of access to justice for all. Access to justice, as we've already heard from previous speakers, is one of the most fundamental rights that we have. And without it, our other rights are less secure. Despite this political undertaking by heads of state, the justice gap remains dangerously wide 7 years on. And it's clear that as we edge closer to the SDG deadline of 2030, we are just not on track. The onset of the COVID-19 pandemic showed how dangerous a lack of justice and equality can be when lockdowns placed women, girls, and those marginalized by society at particular risk of violence and plunged millions into poverty. But the pandemic can't be used as an excuse for a lack of progress on SDG 16. Back in 2019, we were already well off track to meet this vital goal. A landmark report by the World Justice Project found that 5.1 billion people around the world lived outside the protection of the law. Yet, while COVID-19 acted as an exposer and a multiplier of existing injustices, this global crisis also revealed a new kind of legitimacy in activities rooted in issues of direct concern to local communities. For example, in Tunisia, women's groups formed to lobby courts to hear gender-based violence cases. In Brazil, many workers were put at such risk during the pandemic that it spurred a heightened focus on workers' rights and calls for reform from civil society. And obviously for millions worldwide, the murder of George Floyd in the United States in May 2020 was a stark imperative to confront the pervasiveness of systemic racial injustice. We must applaud those dedicated to calling out unjust systems, often at great personal risk. I would say at increasing personal risk in our world today. I've had the privilege of hearing from visionary justice leaders during this forum, including the young justice leaders that we launched today. Grassroots rights defenders, governments championing people-centered justice for all as part of the Justice Action Coalition, and justice professionals who've resolutely decided that the status quo is just not good enough. Young people are not an optional extra in this future that we must forge together. We must include all voices, especially the most marginalized, in charting the way forward. A personal learning curve for me over the pandemic, because I'm an elder, was becoming more au fait with technology. Like most of you, I have Zoomed, Teamed, Skyped, webinared countless times in the last 2 years. And technology has been a vital part of the conversation here this week. We must ensure that technology is harnessed ethically to tackle corruption and to provide accessible justice services for all citizens. We've seen some wonderful innovations in the past 2 years, bringing home the moral and very practical need to embrace technology for the good of the people. As with any global challenge, listening to and championing those most affected by corruption, by injustice, by inequality is essential. For the justice gap to be closed, we must create truly inclusive justice systems, driven forwards by people-centered, intergenerational, and intersectional solutions. Corruption is a multiplier of injustices around the world, from war to poverty and inequality, and they will persist until we take decisive action against it. Over the years, my own work on the urgent fight for climate justice has literally proved to me just how inextricably linked all forms of injustice are, and that access to justice is crucial to ensuring our collective safe future. Those most affected by the climate crisis frequently lack the legal protections to address its impacts. Climate change is not just an environmental challenge, it's a human rights challenge, it's a rule of law challenge. And there is progress, as the groundbreaking case against Shell, ordered by the Hague District Court to reduce its worldwide CO2 emissions by 45% by 2030 showed just last year. Fair and innovative legal systems have a vital role to play in tackling climate change and upholding justice everywhere. And I must say, as somebody who practiced law for a lot of my earlier life, I'm really pleased to see that courts and judges are stepping up and are understanding that it is important that they look at the increasing evidence of the pollution and the way in which emissions are caused by heavy emitters and try to make them responsible. But we have more to do. It's incumbent on all of us to embrace the climate justice challenge. And people are drivers of change. That includes all of us here today, whether we're government leaders, donors, civil society campaigners, or now independent elders like me. Each of us has a role to play in tackling corruption and ensuring that people around the world have access to their fundamental human rights of equality and justice. We're here because of the partnerships that we have created and because we refuse to accept a world which is unfair, unjust, and corrupt. To me, the networks and coalitions we continue to build are an important reminder that we can only tackle seemingly insurmountable challenges when we listen to each other and when we work together because we have listened to each other, and for those who cannot be present in this room. When Nelson Mandela brought the elders together in 2007, he saw the fostering of hope as a critical part of our mandate. As chair of the elders today, I believe that hope, with all of the force and power it brings, is the key to change. I must say I leave this forum today feeling energized and inspired. I said that to the young participants at the launch of the Young Justice Leaders. I left the room feeling even more charged, even more energized than I had come in. And I hope you do too. Together we can turn our learning into action. We can ensure a kinder, fairer, and more just world for all. And we must. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Robinson. I think we all share that feeling of hope. And it's in no small part because of the World Justice Challenge and the terrific innovators that it has brought into our midst this week. So at this time, it is my pleasure to invite to the stage Jim Silkenat, member of the Board of Directors of the World Justice Project and chair of the distinguished panel of judges that we convened to select this year's challenge winners. Jim?
Thank you, Betsy. The World Justice Challenge has always been my favorite part of the forum. The wonderful rule of law projects being considered by our group personally inspire all of us to see what more we can do to build the rule of law. And perhaps more important for us as an organization, the Challenge Awards are a positive investment in building the rule of law for the future of all of our communities. We honor the courage and tenacity of the organizations and individuals that we will hear about later in this program. As you know, the World Justice Challenge is a global competition to recognize impactful projects that protect and advance the rule of law. This year's challenge is dedicated to projects that address structural inequities and governance weaknesses associated with the COVID-19 crisis. Applicants from all over the world were invited to submit a project for consideration in one of three categories: access to justice, anti-corruption and open government, and equal rights and non-discrimination. Interest in the competition was impressive. The World Justice Project received more than 300 applications representing 118 countries. These came from civil society, educational institutions, the private sector, local and national government agencies, and intergovernmental institutions on 6 continents. Applications were judged on a number of criteria, including demonstrated impact, sustainability to continue their work, and potential to be scaled or replicated. This group was narrowed down to 30 finalists who have joined us here for the forum and who showcased their projects for us yesterday. These impressive finalists were evaluated by a 10-member judging panel who have reviewed applications and deliberated over the last few months to select 4 winning projects. We will award a prize in each of the challenge's 3 substantive categories: access to justice, anti-corruption, and open government, and equal rights and non-discrimination. A 4th prize, the Data for Justice prize, will be given to a project that demonstrated the best overall use of data and evidence to address a significant rule of law issue. A 5th project will receive the Alumni Vote Prize, which has been chosen by winners and finalists of prior challenge events, and we are looking forward to that prize as well. To present these particular awards, I would like to invite my fellow challenge judge, Betty Barca, to the podium. Betty.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Mic test? Okay. Thank you, Jim. It is my absolute honor and privilege to announce the World Justice Challenge 2022 winners in 4 categories. The first category is equal rights and non-discrimination. The winner is, drum roll, Safe City, a crowd map for sexual and gender-based violence by the Red Dot Foundation and the Urban Vision India.
Well, thank you so much. It's a great honor to receive this prize, and more so because all the other solutions were incredible. So thank you once again. You know, the issue that I work on is sexual violence and gender-based violence, and honestly, it's totally unfair that even today, 1 in 3 women around the world on an average experience some form of it at least once in their lifetime. And with Safe City, we are offering them an opportunity to document their experiences, thereby giving them voice and agency to not only share and record their experiences, bridging the data gap that exists, but also use that data to hold institutions accountable. We've heard about the power of data. We've heard about putting people at the center of solutions, as well as listening to the lived realities to design our systems. Safe City is such a solution. I would love for this issue to be ended in my lifetime, but I know it's going to be difficult. So I'm asking each of you to join me on this journey to ending sexual and gender-based violence, because it's unjust, it's unfair, and it's discriminatory. So thank you once again, and please get in touch with me if you believe that everybody has the right to a peaceful and just life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody, and thank you. Congratulations once again. The next winner will be awarded in the category of access to justice. And the winner is, drum roll, Championing Access to Justice, Improving Cambodia's Courts of Appeal System, Cambodia Bridges to Justice Program.
This is insanely overwhelming. Thank you. Akuncharan. I'm here on behalf of my country director, Mr. Pandit. Sorry. If he is here, he is one of the country's first defenders following the Khmer Rouge and subsequent civil war. He has spent the past 20 years pioneering justice, access to justice in Cambodia, fearlessly and tirelessly. He's old, he's very tired. If he is here, his trials will proceed without a lawyer or they will be delayed. And that is the reality of the fragility of the rule of law in Cambodia. I would really sincerely like to thank the World Justice Project and the World Justice Forum for this opportunity to tell our story and to shine a light on the challenges in access to justice in Cambodia, and for being able to listen and learn from everyone I've met over this past week. It's just an unbelievable opportunity for us. And I'd also like to thank everyone I've met who is part of the other teams where we've shared stories and the friendships that have formed this past week. I hope that that can lead to further collaboration or support in this work as we move forward together to build the more just society. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and congratulations once again. The next winner will be awarded in the anti-corruption and open government category. The winner is... Well done, thank you, team. Trial Monitoring of Corruption Cases, Transparency Information Technology Initiative, Nigeria. Unfortunately, they couldn't join us in person, but they are on Zoom. Congratulations. Oops. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. Distinguished Excellencies and World Justice Forum attendees, thank you very much. Thank you and thank you. Let me begin by expressing our sincere appreciation to the World Justice Forum, to the team at the World Justice Project, to the judges, and to our co-finalists. This is a double honor for us, first as finalists and now a global recognition on a global stage of world justice leaders. It is incredible to be recognized among a community of change makers promoting best practices on rule of law across the world. This award is bigger than us. It is for people that suffers a lot because of corruption and injustice. We are sure them will continue to hold our leaders accountable through the justice system. Thanks again to the World Justice Forum. Thank you for your work in building more just communities around the world. And together, we can continue to work against injustice for more inclusive and accountable societies. Thank you very much. It is an honor.
Thank you. Congratulations once again. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. The next award is the Data for Justice Prize for the project that demonstrates the best use of data and evidence. And the winner is InReach, formerly known as Asylum Connect Global Project.
Thank you so much. I didn't prepare anything, so I didn't think we were gonna win. So bear with me. First of all, thank you so much to the World Justice Project for this recognition. Really appreciate it, and I've been so inspired by all of the other finalists, and you're all championing such great causes. So I think I'm just gonna take this opportunity while I have people from all over the world in countries where there are various rights for LGBTQ rights, and I work on LGBTQ rights, to say during Pride Month, when you go back home, to be advocates for LGBTQ, specifically trans people in your communities. Trans rights are human rights, and until we, as a collective country, recognize that, there will be no justice. So again, thank you so much for this honor.
Thank you all so much. I would now like to invite the 2019 Challenge winner, Nicole Nelson, to the stage to announce the winner of the Alumni Vote Prize.
Hi, I'm Nicole Nelson, and it's wonderful to be here again. We were asked this year, one of the 5 World Forum Justice Project Awards were selected by the alumni, those who are previous winners and finalists of the World Justice Project. And as a recipient of one of those awards, I know how transformative it can be. And so I feel very fortunate to be able to represent our alumni network in expanding the network to include a new project. And so the award winner is, please, drum roll. Our wonderful colleagues. Whoa, it's still going. Thank you. Our wonderful colleagues from the PAS Foundation for their Justice for All amid COVID-19 in Ghana.
May I respectfully ask my colleagues to probably join me just for some few minutes as I deliver my speech. Indeed, it's a great delight to be here. As you can see, we are all under 40. And one judge told us when we had a breakdown of car on the road, assistant prisoners, aside that when COVID came at the tension and the peak of it, donating all PPEs, and then we came back all sick with COVID. But we were never considered as frontline workers. In that process, we were asking why. But today, World Justice has given us meaning for the why question that was asked. That the judge said, Mr. Owusu, why are you enslaving yourself or imprisoning yourself with your team to release prisoners? Today, we did not imprison ourselves. World Justice has put the spotlight on us. And so we dedicate this award to all prisoners back home, and then the Justice for All Steering Committee, and to my team, PAS Foundation, once again, for the little work we've been able to do. What baffles us is reducing the remand population, the pre-trial prisoner population, from 33% to currently 9.5% in Ghana, and that is what we are happy for. Thank you once again.
the other judges could join us up here, that would be great. One more photograph, please.
Wow, tough act to follow. But now we move into the final stage of our closing ceremony here, and I would like to share with you excerpts of the forum final statement prepared by the World Justice Project in consultation with our co-producing partners. Now, there have been a lot of good ideas and a lot of commitment and ambition this week, and so our final statement ended up being about 4 or 5 pages long. You'll be happy to know that I'm not going to read the entire thing. We are posting it to our website, and you can read all the detail, but there are some important highlights that I'd like to share. World Justice Forum 2022 participants from 116 countries committed to building more just communities, gathered in The Hague and online for 4 days of intensive learning, collaboration, and agenda setting on 3 pressing and intersecting priorities for strengthening justice and the rule of law, namely fighting corruption, closing the justice gap, and countering discrimination. Meeting amidst a global pandemic that has taken the lives of at least 6 million people, and against a backdrop of deepening inequalities, a worsening climate crisis, critical food and energy shortages, endemic corruption, and a fraying social contract and trust. Coming together in the face of rising authoritarianism, growing conflict, declining respect for human rights for all, and shrinking civic space. Gathering in the shadow of Russia's unjustified and unprovoked war against an independent and sovereign Ukraine, and conscious of how this most recent violation of the United Nations Charter, together with other long-standing conflicts, has brought into stark relief the fragility of the rules-based global order and the relationship between weak national government and global instability. We emerge from our deliberations with a fortified determination to face these cascading challenges head-on, and with renewed commitment to tackle these problems collaboratively across diverse sectors for change. We share the United Nations Secretary General's conviction, as articulated in our common agenda report, that the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development still offers the best path forward for all countries. We appreciate the 2023 Justice Appeal adopted by the ministerial meeting of the Justice Action Coalition on the eve of the World Justice Forum, and calling for a pivot to people-centered justice. We commit to rescue the rule of law, embodied in Sustainable Development Goal 16, from backsliding at an alarming rate. We call for a redoubling of political will and investment to realize a new people-centered vision of the rule of law as an essential foundation for justice, opportunity, peace, and the achievement of all of the SDGs. Our discussions yielded fresh insights and ideas for providing justice for all and strengthening the rule of law in 3 priority areas of action. These recommendations, generated by our discussion, here capture specific steps to combat corruption and promote open government, to achieve access to justice for all, and to combat discrimination, ensure equal rights, and leave no one behind. And in each of those areas, the full statement has lots of good ideas and specific commitments to action, which I encourage you to read in detail, to commit yourself to, and to promote with other organizations and institutions. In conclusion, as we leave The Hague and look toward what we each can do to build more just communities, the message is clear. The rule of law is essential to peace, justice, opportunity, human rights, and sustainable development. We must work together to generate renewed political commitment and investment to ensure it is renewed. We are inspired by what we learned this week about the hundreds of concrete projects and proposals underway that tackle these common challenges, starting with the award-winning work we recognized as part of this year's World Justice Challenge and WJP Rule of Law Award. We are encouraged by growing momentum at the grassroots and at the policymaking levels to carry out change. We hope all the visionary change makers and thought leaders gathered at this forum will leave fortified by the solidarity, friendship, and support we felt here to continue their essential contributions to building more just communities. And finally, we call upon all leaders to actively defend and advance universal principles of fair and accountable governance and fundamental rights as we work together at the local, national, and international levels and prepare for the Sustainable Development Goals Summit of 2023. So that is our charge that we have given ourselves. Before turning to a final couple of reflections, I'd like to say some important thank yous. We've recognized our co-producing partners and our sponsors throughout the week, but there's another group of people that really need a shout out. And that is the board and staff of the World Justice Project, and if I can ask them to stand, please. This group of people has a tremendous commitment to our mission to advance the rule of law around the world. I want to say a special thanks to our engagement team led by Ted Picone, who have had the vision to pull this together. And I'm going to name them all because they need recognition, but I'm going to ask you not to applaud for everyone, or we will never get to the reception. So Ted and Lauren Kitts and Killian Dorier, Sally Aldrich, Abigail Boyce, Rosa Schreinermachers, and Miriam Bahadir, that amazing engagement team. I also want to recognize the incredible folks who helped us realize the ambition of taking this forum online, the AV team at Borgonia, in particular Felix, Ronald, Carl, Ewood, Mark, Siak, Peter, and Leo. We could not have done this without you. And a special final thanks to our event managers at the Obsession Company, Emma, Joyce, and Benta. We've been well served by you all. Now, I'm going to turn shortly to the World Justice Project's co-founder and CEO, Bill Neukom, whose vision created the World Justice Project and really brings us all together here today. But before turning to Bill, I'd like to share some concluding reflections in the form of a video tribute featuring the words of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Archbishop Tutu was another honorary chair of the World Justice Project and with us as a great supporter of our cause from the early days of the project, and we miss him.
Dear friends, the rule of law matters to all of us, to the entire human family, wherever we live, however we look, regardless of our ethnicity, religion, gender, geographical location, or class. Strengthening the rule of law is a never-ending process. No society has ever attained, let alone sustained, a perfect realization of the rule of law. That is the challenge that lies before us.
And now let me turn to WJP co-founder and CEO Bill Neukom for some final words and the charge to all of us. Bill?
Thank you and thank you. Look around this audience and thank each other. Thank you for being here at this forum. Thank you for the remarkable and courageous work you do at home to advance the rule of law. We've come together this week for a common cause of advancing the rule of law around the globe. You've had discussions on dozens of essential topics. You've listened and you've learned together, and you've created action plans which will drive real action and achieve results. And now we are about to adjourn, having expanded and strengthened this fellowship of first-time attendees and veteran attendees at the forum. Together we will advance the rule of law in measurable and durable ways. We at the World Justice Project will do everything in our means to support your work. Until we meet again in 2024 at a World Justice Forum. In the meantime, we encourage you to use our definition. You can't go anywhere without knowing what you're talking about. So capture real meaning of this otherwise capacious concept called the rule of law. We like our definition. You have tested our definition. Please use our definition in your important work. And deploy our index data. There is no other index as comprehensive as ours. There is no other index that goes to people on the ground and asks them about the realities of the rule of law in their work and lives. And frequent our network. Think of that network as a sort of centrifuge, throwing off ideas and best practices, and think of it as a magnet, attracting ideas and wisdom and best practices. It does both things. It's there, built for you to use to make yourselves even more effective at your rule of law work. There'll be times, we have learned from you every time we come together, there'll be times when you're not here, when you might feel a little bit alone. You might think that you are all islands, but you're never alone. And picture this. You may be islands, but you're part of an archipelago of islands that encircles the globe. Everything that's important to get done is difficult to accomplish. Everything that's important to get done is difficult to accomplish. And sometimes accomplishments are improbable, not just difficult, but improbable. And that requires our very best work and energy. But never forget that kites fly higher against the wind. We welcome headwinds to go higher. Some accomplishments may seem impossible. There's no such thing. Who would have predicted the fall of the Iron Curtain and the return of freedom to all of those folks in those countries? Who would have predicted that Nelson Mandela would be released from prison and ascend to lead a rule of law regime in South Africa? Who would have predicted the progress that has been made and more needs to be made in the women's movement worldwide. If your cause is just, nothing is impossible. Our cause is just, is it not? Is it not? So, you and we, all of us, have work to do. It's good work and just work, and there's lots and lots of it. So let's get on with it. We say farewell to you today until we meet again in person or remotely. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Enough.
Well, that brings the World Justice Forum 2022 formally to a close. However, because we're insatiable for this conversation, we do have 3 more events tomorrow. So they are listed in your program. They are going to be terrific, and I encourage those of you who will still be here to take advantage of those opportunities. I want to invite the members of the WJP staff and board to the stage. We're going to have some photos following this ceremony, and the rest of you get a jump on the reception out front, and we'll catch up with you shortly to congratulate all of the challenge finalists and to enjoy that fellowship.